Good morning, everybody. Just a few words to begin about the situation in Iran. I don't think Israel, frankly, had any choice as Iran moves closer and closer to nuclear weapon capability, and as Iran clearly states, they want to wipe Israel and its people off the face of the map. I don't think they had any choice at all. I'm pleased that the Americans have intervened. Generally, I'm against military interventions. I was vehemently opposed to what happened in Libya. I was strongly opposed to what happened in Iraq 20 years ago. And I've always thought that going for regime change was a really very dangerous policy, because you don't know what is going to follow. In this case, this Iranian regime, brutal, evil, they've been there for 4 decades, and I still find it actually quite difficult to believe that Obama, the European Union, and of course the ever-reliable British Foreign Office got all of this completely and utterly wrong with the JCPOA agreement just over a decade ago, which just simply allowed tens of billions of dollars to be freed up for the Iranians, which they've used to fund the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah, and anybody else that intends to cause grief. So I hope and believe that the American reports are right and that Iran no longer has nuclear capability, and we'll see what comes after that. Perhaps the only surprise is the only person in the country who didn't seem to know the Americans were about to do something was the British Prime Minister himself, who appears to be totally dumbfounded by the whole thing, and says there should be de-escalation, whilst in the next sentence saying Iran should not have nuclear capability. We'll look forward to the Prime Minister explaining to the House of Commons this afternoon exactly what the British position is. Over the course of the last few years, a political narrative that has got stronger and stronger is tax the rich. Is it fair that people earn these vast sums of money? Surely we should tax them more. And you might have thought, traditionally, this would be a policy that would come from the Labour Party, but not a bit of it. Not a bit of it. In 14 years in power, under the Conservatives, we saw taxes go up, we saw thresholds frozen, we saw significant changes to non-dom tax rules. Indeed, there was something like 150,000 people with non-dom tax status 10 years ago. That number today probably, we don't know officially yet, but probably nearer now to 60,000 and 70,000, and falling very, very quickly. The counter-arguments that the top 1% of taxpayers pay 30% of a tax take appear not to have made any difference. And that narrative in politics and in the media, a sort of anti-success, anti-money narrative that we've now been living with for a few years, apart, of course, from Premier League footballers. And if they earn £300,000 a week, that's absolutely fine. But there is some justification in anger in our country, some justification that since 2008, the rich have got richer, and those at the lower end of the scale are simply no better off. And it all goes back to the bailouts, it all goes back to the failures of the banking system in 2008, when effectively it was the little man and woman that bailed out the big banks. And ever since then, through a policy of quantitative easing, what we've seen is a massive push in the value of assets. So if you've owned property, if you've owned stocks and shares since 2008, you've had a fantastic time. But for those who don't own property or don't own shares, they are relatively, by some measures, worse off than they were last time round. Now, we saw all of this under George Osborne. Jeremy Hunt accelerated the whole thing, effectively beginning the end of non-dom status, and the media said, wasn't it brilliant? Brilliant! He's triangulated the Labour Party. They can't attack him from the left on money. And all of this, of course, didn't understand human behaviour, didn't understand the sheer mobility that modern-day entrepreneurs and wealthy people have. The last year for which we have full figures shows that 10,800 wealthy people left the country. Some of them non-doms, some of them British too. We don't have the updated figures, but certainly all the stories we get from central London is that it is becoming a very rapid exodus. And this is catastrophic for our country. Rachel Reeves, of course, in her first budget has completely finished the job by bringing in all sorts of rules that didn't exist. For example, implications for global wealth on inheritance. Our tax take is falling. Many talented people are leaving. And we want, as a party, as many entrepreneurs, as many risk takers, as many job creators, as many people paying lots of tax, as many people investing huge sums of money. We want as many of them as possible to be in our country. And that is why today we're coming up with this idea of the Britannia Card, which Zia will go into more detail. But we're also doing something with a very specific aim, aimed at those in work. One of the things that we heard so often, heading up to the 1st of May local elections, a young couple that work, pay for childcare, they say, why do we bother? Because the people next door do nothing, and they're pretty much as well off as we are. And so many things that we talked about making that gap between being on benefits and going to work bigger, and this policy will directly contribute towards that. I spoke to a senior tax advisor in the Far East this morning who said to me, even if people don't take up the Britannia Card, big global businessmen and women will buy it anyway to give themselves an option. I'm confident that this will raise a lot of money. I believe it will stop the exodus of people leaving this country. And given that the Labour Party now tend to copy every single policy that we put forward, including today, they're saying that energy bills are too expensive for industry. Well, who knew? Who knew? So I expect within a year, something like the Britannia Card will be introduced by whoever succeeds Rachel Reeves, given that she is the worst Chancellor I've certainly seen in my lifetime. So I hope we're setting the agenda here to stop the exodus and to start to encourage people to come back to this country, both foreigners and British businessmen and women. I will now hand over for more detail to Zia Yusef.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you for coming. So, a big economic announcement from us today. You know, for centuries, Britain led the world. It was an economic powerhouse that was a magnet for international talent and treasure. Under a Reform government with Nigel as Prime Minister, we will rekindle that spirit, and it'll take some time, but we will revivify a prosperous and powerful Britain. But we have to be honest about one of the key ingredients as to how one makes that happen. One key ingredient is that we need the wealthiest job creators, wealth creators and entrepreneurs to be here in the UK. And right now the opposite is happening. We are seeing an unprecedented drain from this country of those with the broadest shoulders to contribute to the tax pool, and in so doing, this Labour government, like the Tories before, are soaking the rest of the workers in this country with that tax burden. And we can see this already in the data. You'd have seen a Bloomberg report that shows well north of 4,000 company directors have left in a very short period of time. That was a record. We've seen pretty much every financial advisor in the UK advising international clients who are more mobile than ever, sounding the alarm that these are policies that are going to be disastrous for the British economy. And the reality is that even the term non-dom has become, you know, these people have been made to feel persona non grata because there's a narrative has been created that these people contribute nothing. So we have to set right that too. Whatever policy we formulated had to be fair and had to be seen to be fair and be of immediate benefit, as Nigel said, to people who work hard, set their alarm clocks in the evening and wake up early in the morning to go to work. So we are introducing the Britannia Card. This card will be available to foreign, internationally wealthy people who are going to come here and create jobs and take risk, as Nigel says. They will pay a landing fee of £250,000. So the UK will become incredibly attractive to the internationally wealthy, but they must contribute immediately to the prosperity of the country and make a direct contribution into the pockets and the bank balances of the lowest 10% of earners in full-time work in this country. For that £250,000, they get taxes on a remittance basis, so no taxation on foreign earnings, foreign gains, or foreign wealth, and no inheritance tax on on foreign wealth. But here's a really important thing. All of that money will be pooled at the end of each year by HMRC, and within 90 days of the end of the tax year, it will be distributed evenly across around about 2.5 million people in full-time work in this country. And that is going to make a meaningful difference to the lives of such people, to a care home assistant in Cardiff, or a waitress in Cornwall, or frankly people like my mother who still work as a nurse full-time. She's over 70. And some people say, well, Zia, with your money, why didn't you? If I tried to stop her working, I couldn't, because she's a caregiver, and that's what she loves to do. These are people who love their country, who graft hard, and frankly have been left behind by the British economy, as Nigel said, since the financial crisis. What this is a transfer of wealth from the international wealthy, who I remind you are not here currently. This is a really important point. We wouldn't be getting any tax revenue from these people without a policy like this, to the people who are grafting hardest for the least in this country. And really importantly too, this is a tax that the internationally wealthy will voluntarily pay, based on all the conversations that our MPs and Nigel have had, would be desperate to pay, because despite the best efforts of our politicians, this country still has a large amount going for it. We have the best people, the best language, the best legal system, the best time zone, and we have the City of London. This country still has so much going for it. So these people will want to pay the tax. They want to pay it. We already have a website up and running, britanniacard.co.uk, where such people can register their interest. They will have to wait for a general election for Nigel to be the Prime Minister before they get their card and can wire the Treasury that money. But this is how we will revivify the British economy. I want to make a few other points, because it's not necessarily that well known that, even under the old non-dom programme, and this will be true with our Britannia Card too, these people still paid, on average, about £120,000 in direct taxation in this country each year. £8.9 billion in a single year. And that's just in direct taxation. That's capital gains, income tax. It doesn't include, for example, VAT. It doesn't include stamp duty, land tax, which are enormous numbers, which there isn't really very good data on it. You're going to get some, we've already seen a quote from this disastrous Labour government. This Labour government, which has no business experience, doesn't really talk to any of these people other than to admonish them, about how it's going to increase borrowing. Firstly, this is coming from the same government that just ramped borrowing about £130 billion in their spring statement, and we're going to see working people will see the consequences of that at the next tax announcement. But we shouldn't also forget that the OBR actually have a poor record of forecasting when it comes to predicting how a small group of very wealthy people will react to a policy. I don't know whether that's surprising or not, but let's look at capital gains. When Rachel Reeves hiked the capital gains tax, because again, she has no idea how the real economy actually works and how these people think and how mobile they are, the OBR said it would increase tax revenue. What's happened? It's gone down. It's gone from £14.5 billion to £13 billion. But that is £1.5 billion of money that the Treasury no longer has. And where's that money going to come from? It's going to come from hard-working people who are struggling to make ends meet as it is. So we're going to be honest. Nigel's going to be honest. Our MPs are going to be honest with the British people that, look, we have to renew the social contract. We need wealthy people here. Chasing them away is biting off one's nose to spite your face. So we need those people here. They want to be here. And they, as much as anybody, I'll tell you this too, couldn't be happier to be making a direct contribution to those grafting hardest for the least pay. So that will be £1.5 billion to £2.5 billion, based on our estimates, each year in direct revenue just from the card fees alone. That's based on 6,000 at the low end of cards issued in a single year to 10,000 at the higher end. We think there's scope for more than that. In fact, under the old non-dom regime, more than 10,000 coming to the year in a single year was routine. It was perfectly normal. It's only since, as Nigel said, the succession of first Tory appalling chancellors. I mean, I think in one case we had 3 chancellors in a week, so it's hard to keep up. And now, under Labour, we're seeing these people flee, take with them their vast resources that we need in this country to prosper. And that money will go directly to those in full-time work who are earning the least. And then on top of that, you will get the multiplier effect, because obviously basic economic theory says that £600 to £1,000 per year in a tax-free dividend paid to those workers is almost certainly going to go straight out into the economy, into local high streets, into cafes, into local resorts, into local restaurants, exactly where it should be. So we're very excited about this. We've already had fantastic feedback from people who are already here and about to leave and are making arrangements to leave, who just want, by the way, they don't want a perfect country. They tell us, look, we're setting up in Dubai, not because we love Dubai, but just because we can see the direction this country is going. And all they want to see is some semblance of common sense starting to return to this country. And seeing how well reform under Nigel's leadership has done is giving them that hope. And we hope that this policy will appeal not just to them, but of course the 2.5 odd million working people who will directly benefit with money in their pockets as a result of it. Thank you very much, everyone.
Zia, thank you very much indeed. Now we have a long list of questions which no doubt will cover a multiple of subjects. Let's begin with Harry Farley from the BBC.
Thank you, Mr Farage. Harry Farley from BBC. Firstly, on Iran, do you think that the UK should be willing to join the US in any future strikes on Iran? And on the Britannia Card, by spending this revenue from the new non-DOMS policy on a direct cash transfer to the lowest paid, you're not spending it on all the other areas of public spending that the current non-DOMS policy goes on, and you haven't set out any spending cuts alongside it. So doesn't this amount to more fantasy economics?
On Iran, it just would be nice to know, do we have a policy? Does the government have a policy? As I said earlier, they appear to be completely blindsided by what were entirely predictable actions. I would have thought that the Americans are probably quite capable of managing this on their own. If they ask for help, should we give it? I believe yes. But it has raised over the last 24 hours the issue of Diego Garcia. The issue of this, I mean, just the most appalling deal one's ever seen. And, you know, Lord Hermer, that great patriot, basically saying, well, America can't do anything from Diego Garcia until we inform the Mauritians, who of course are mates with the Chinese, who of course are mates with the Iranians. And so we understand the mission flew from Missouri with several refuelings on the way, memories of the Vulcans going to the Falklands many years ago. And that's fine, but a very, very risky operation for the Americans. Very risky operation. If you've got to refuel several times over 18,000 miles, things can go wrong. So, yeah, let's get some clarity. Where does the Prime Minister actually stand? What is our policy? And if necessary, we should help, but I doubt they'll need it. On the tax, and I'm sure Zia will add to this, look, the upfront $250,000 actually is the tip of the iceberg of what these people will spend in revenues and taxes in this country if they come back. Just think of the average stamp duty they're paying on houses they're buying in Westminster or Chelsea or wherever it may be. Just think of the VAT they're paying. These people are the big spenders. So, yes, this is a sum of money that goes in one direction, but it's our very strong view this will generate a lot more wealth into the coffers. Do you want to add to that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I'll tell you what's fantasy economics is constantly ramping tax rates on literally the most internationally mobile people in the world with the best tax advisors in the world. That's fantasy economics. And you're going to see this. You're going to see this already. The Treasury is briefing against Rachel Reeves, trying to get her to U-turn. I mean, there's widespread reports about this on some of these harebrained ideas that she has, for example, specifically the inheritance tax thing, because it is resulting in less money for the exchequer. As Nigel said, there's actually very little data available, interestingly enough, on how much these people spend on corporation tax through the companies that they run, on VAT, and as Nigel said, on stamp duty, land tax. I saw a data point that it was in the millions, which makes total sense. So, as Nigel said, the $250,000 from the card fees, yes, that goes directly to the 2.5 million workers, but there's going to be billions more that come from this. And mark my words, when the OBR gives you a print on the population, the OBR, their forecast about how much the changes Rachel Reeves made was based. So number one, by their own admission, they said it was extremely difficult to forecast. They did admit that. Their forecast is based on the population of non-DOMs declining at 1.5% a year. The briefings from the Treasury, well-sourced briefings, suggest that more than 10% have left. And we haven't even had the first year. And all of the anecdotal conversations we are having with such people and with financial advisors telling us that. So that's what fantasy economics is. And I want to make the point again about capital gains tax, because again, the OBR, when it comes to trying to forecast, unsurprisingly perhaps, because I don't think they talk to these people very often, when it comes to forecasting how a very small group in absolute terms who control vast wealth and vastly disproportionately contribute to such taxes will respond to a change in taxation like this, they have a hopeless record. The most recent case being, as I said, capital gains tax. They said hiking capital gains tax rate on these people by 4 points would result in more tax for the exchequer. Literally the opposite is happening. There is less money to pay for schools, less money to pay for police officers, less money to pay for roads.
There's been a misconception around this here, hasn't there, that the non-dom doesn't pay tax like the rest of us. I think on average, the average non-dom has been paying £120,000 a year in direct taxation, and that's without, as we've said already, the things we can't measure, we don't know about, stamp duty, VAT, etc. Right, next question, Christopher Hope from GB News.
Nigel Farage, how have you come to this level, this money you're giving away from this non-DOMs figure? And to Zia Yusef, also to you, do you worry it might be misappropriated? Will it go to two people on the same income in the same family doubling up? Or will even criminals get it?
Well, hang on a second. This is for working people. This is for, rather like our child tax credits, it's for working people. We're doing everything we can. We've said from the start that we are the party of working people. We are the party of those that get up early in the morning and go to work. We're the party of people who don't want to go on benefits. They want, for their own sense of pride, to keep on working, but find themselves, in many situations, very little better off than the couple that live next door and choose not to work as a lifestyle choice. So once again, we're doing something here aimed at working people. So the idea that criminals are going to get it, etc., just is not going to be the case, all right? How do we reach the figure? It's about finding a figure that we think lots of people will pay, because what we want are lots and lots of job creators, lots and lots of risk takers, lots and lots of entrepreneurs to come into our country. We believe we've got this figure right, and I am certain, I am absolutely certain, this would have a big uptake in the first few years.
Yeah, I mean, I couldn't agree more with that. And, the point about criminals getting taxpayer money, I mean, we all know the tens of billions that have been lost to, frankly, incompetence as a result of a government policy. I mean, we could spend an hour talking about all the COVID fraud, for example, which is still entirely unaccounted for. So that is a really good point. And, Nigel's Prime Minister and Reform government will set to work to put a stop to all of that stuff. That's a competence issue. It's not going to happen with this programme. And as Nigel said, look, we look to price it based on a number that people would love to pay. Yeah. That's a really important point. This is not taxing people who are working hard in this country against their wishes and redistributing it. This is money coming from people who would not otherwise be here. And remember, it is just the start of their economic relationship with the Exchequer.
Yeah. Let's go to Noah Hoffman from The Sun.
Thank you. You've long tied yourself to the mast of free market capitalism, but the Britannia Card is a major redistribution of wealth to give a cash top-up to low-paid workers. This seems an admission that the market doesn't give sufficient wages to some in society. Have you been on a political journey, or is this just a ploy to win more voters with the promise of free money?
Nice try, but the idea that I'm somehow putting forward a profoundly left-wing concept today could not be further from the truth. We're saying we want success. We want people who make loads of money to come into Britain in huge numbers and pay lots and lots of tax and buy lots of houses and spend lots of money. And we're going to help those who choose to work as opposed not to work, who have been hammered. Come on, look at it. Look at it. Year after year now, we have frozen the level at which people start to pay tax. We're dragging people in to higher tax bands. I mean, you know, when 40p was established as top rate tax back in the 1980s, 1.5 million people paid it. And that 1.5 million kept pace all the way through the Blair years. As of the end of next year, there will be 8 million people paying what was top rate tax. We have been over-taxing work, all right? And you know our aspirations, our big tax aspiration is to lift that threshold significantly. You know, that's going to take time to do. This is a short-term way of helping working people. And they're being hammered with the most ridiculous energy bills in the world as a result of lunatic government policy on net zero. They're being hammered on the 5% increase they get on their council tax every year, and we think partly due to inefficiencies and spending at Town Hall, but you'll hear more about that. So look, there's nothing, there is nothing that says in this that we've changed our minds. We're pro-growth, we're pro-business, we're pro-entrepreneurs, we're pro-making money, and we're pro-working people. And this, I believe, reaffirms strongly all of those things. John Walker from The Express.
Thank you, Nigel. So you've supported the US military action against Iran. And as you know, previous wars in the Middle East have tended to produce large amounts of refugees, many of whom make the way to this country. Is there a danger that the same will happen again this time?
Well, the Iranians are making their way to this country every day on dinghies across the English Channel. 3 of them recently, who came by dinghy, were arrested for terrorism, yet no one seems to care. There's no great debate over the road. We just accept it now. Oh, terrorists come into Britain, that's fine. People come in across them dinghies and commit rape, but we just try and cover it up and don't even discuss it. I don't know. I mean, my feeling on Iran is that the Persian people, the lovely Persian people, deserve an awful lot better than they've had from this appalling regime. I mean, look, it's impossible to predict. It's impossible to predict. But I have felt for some time, my judgment, I've felt for some time that the Iranian regime is teetering, is wobbling, could be brought down, and it's difficult to see what comes after it can be worse than what has been there for the last 40 years. Thank you. David Lynch from PA.
Hello there. Thank you very much, Mr. Farage. Just wanted to ask about this is a flat rate tax. So are you going to eventually run out of millionaires and billionaires to charge the cash to, effectively? And I also just wanted to ask as well about, you did an interview with ITV Wales recently, where you talked about getting rid of the Welsh Government's target for 1 million Welsh speakers by 2050. So, I mean, you very well could be in charge in Wales come this time next year, and the Welsh language will be a big part of what reform will be looking after in Wales. It's kind of unique to their administration. So, you know, what's your big idea to look after, I guess?
Yeah, tell me a single government target that never gets met. Well, I'm bored with government targets. We're going to halve this, double that. None of them ever get met. So encourage the language, yes, by all means. Put out meaningless targets. I can't frankly see the point of it. And we've had, decades of this. New governments halfway through. Targets, not a single one being met. And no one believes them anyway. Look, if we're successful with this, then over the course of a few years, tens of thousands of people will come to the United Kingdom on this ticket. And if the British economy turns around from its current dismal state, they'll keep on coming. And even if, after lots have come, we only get a trickle, not a flood, provided they're still paying their average £120,000 a year income tax, provided they're still investing the billions that they do in businesses, in job creation, in risk, I tell you what, we'll be in a much better place than we are right now. Let's go to James Heal at The Spectator.
Thank you very much. You've spoken before at press conferences like this about how you would vote to change the abortion time limit in this country. Do you regret, Nigel, missing last Tuesday's key Commons vote on liberalising abortion laws?
Given that the vote was carried by 200, no. I mean, we're stuck in a very funny parliament. Apart from, occasionally you'll get a vote that matters clearly on dying. Clearly on assisted dying, it was a vote that mattered. Everything else, the government wins by 180, 200. Do I think that many of the things that happened last week were damaging and opening up some quite big questions around the sanctity of life? Yes, but that just says an awful lot about this Parliament. The abortion stuff, I find it very difficult to believe that we've actually passed that. Lucy White from Bloomberg.
Thanks for taking questions. I wanted to ask about the sum of money again that you've decided to charge for this policy. Yeah. £250,000 for a decade, essentially. That's pretty cheap compared to Italy, for example, charging €200,000 per year, and the Trump card, for example, that's into the millions. Does this not scream a little bit of desperation from the UK? And if I may also ask as well, are you worried that it could create perverse incentives for employers to essentially charge very little in wages to their employees, and for employees to not feel like climbing up the ladder at work because they're essentially being subsidised by the state?
Gosh, you'd have to be a very devious employer to work all that out, wouldn't you? I mean, you're running a factory in the West Midlands and you won't know what the revenues are until the end of the year, so no, that just wouldn't work. There has been extraordinary... I met a man the other day who earns £10 million a year in the UK, paying UK tax. He's just been offered a deal in Athens of €100,000 a year. Milano was 100,000 a year. It's gone up to 200,000 a year. Portugal have been doing all sorts of deals over the course of the last few years. And Luxembourg have been doing the most extraordinary deals for years, especially when Mr. Juncker was their Prime Minister. So we've been in this bizarre situation where the rest of Europe, despite being in the European Union, have become very competitive in looking for high net worth individuals, for looking for investors, and we under Conservative and Labour governments have been doing exactly the opposite. So we've set the level what we think is reasonable. Is it the level that global billionaires will worry about? No. But wouldn't it be nice to think that that level's been set, that it might attract the 30-somethings who aren't vastly wealthy but see real opportunities in coming to Britain? The only caveat I would have on this is that London is a great place. There's a lot going for it, whether it's theatre or go to Lord's or Wimbledon or whatever it may be, Ascot, whatever it may be, good legal services, good health provision, private health provision, all those things that those people seek. The only thing that also is making people question London is the very dire state of law and order. And law and order is collapsing in Cairns, London, and that is something else that we have to get right, and that people don't fear with those other jurisdictions. So not everything's perfect in London in terms of law and order, but other than that, for most people in the international global community, they'd much rather be in London than be in Milano, Lisbon, or Athens, and I firmly believe that. Okay, Noah Keat, Politico.
Hi there, thank you, Nigel. The Mail on Sunday reported that a future Reform government would repeal the assisted dying bill. How practical would that be, given that two of your MPs supported the bill, and presumably many future Reform parliamentary candidates also support assisted dying?
I don't know where they got the story from, but I read it with great amusement. I've said nothing of the kind. Nothing of the kind. And so don't believe all that you read in the newspapers. I haven't said anything of the kind. And I do think, and I genuinely do think, that it is a matter of conscience, and I would go on treating it absolutely as such. Okay, Theo Usherwood, Times Radio.
Nigel, just firstly on the American bombing of the Iran nuclear sites. Obviously, you've made great hay about the amount of money that we're paying to Mauritius for Diego Garcia. But in the small print, you mentioned, of course, that we have to ask permission from the Mauritian government. Are you concerned that, in effect, the base has been rendered useless from the American point of view? Because this was obviously a key part of this attack was the element of surprise, which would, of course, been lost had we informed the Mauritians, who could, of course, gone straight to the Chinese and back to the Iranians. So are you concerned that we're effectively paying £30 billion for nothing?
Yes, I am. Of course I am. And I think, the fact that we have to inform Mauritius, who, as I say, the Chinese investment, the Chinese, sort of smart town they've built just outside Port Louis is absolutely enormous. They are, as I say, linked to Iran. Yeah, this is strategically a disastrous deal. Herma seems very happy about it. Frankly, I think Herma's behaviour over this and many other things is frankly bordering on treacherous. This is against our national interest in every way. When it comes to defence, whether we like the current president or not, we have to recognise that without the USA, we are defenceless. And we only share our secrets with America and through the Five Eyes, because they're the only people that we trust. And there is no reason to trust this Mauritian government, this corrupt Mauritian government, in any way at all. And I'm guessing that's why Diego Garcia was not used. And it just shows you that we have a Labour government that doesn't even understand what the national interest is. They seem to be this sort of North London group of human rights lawyers, seem to serve some sort of higher order rather than genuine British national interest. So yes, deeply concerned. Natasha Clark, LBC.
Thank you, Nigel. Just to follow up on Harry's question on Iran, should the Americans decide to take more action, should we join them? Should Starmer come out in support of that? This has also been dubbed a Robin Hood policy today. Were you happy with that nickname of the modern-day Robin Hood? And Zia, are you confident this policy is a good use of your time? Thank you.
Well, that took a long time to come, didn't it? I'm not sure America's going to need our help with Iran. I think we've hindered them already, as Theo's question rather indicated. I've little doubt Diego Garcia would have been used for this. It would have been safer, more sensible, more element of surprise. I doubt they're going to ask for our help. But they could do with our support. And let's see what the Prime Minister has to say on this very important matter in the House of Commons later on today. Robin Hood, well, we're not stealing from the rich, we're encouraging them to come. So I kind of get why people say it. We're very, very specific about this, that the redistribution element of this goes to working people, and I can't emphasise that enough. Those on the lowest pay in this country are the ones having the toughest life, are the ones asking themselves the question, why the hell do we bother? And you can look at statistics for, a couple in London living on benefits with a couple of kids, and you realise that one of them would need to earn $50,000 a year, way above the average salary, to be as well off as they are on benefits. We have to widen the gap between what life at work is like and what life on benefits is like. And of course there are people that are on benefits who genuinely need benefits, but I do find some of the projections for disability benefit going ahead for the next few years deeply alarming. And so there has to be both. We have to get tougher in terms of our assessments, how they're carried out, how they're done, for who qualifies, but equally, human beings respond well to incentives, and this is part of that. Zia, you haven't been doing much for the last few weeks.
Yeah, you know, to be direct, as I look at it now, quite proud of it. I think it was worth my time. Yeah, look, I'd add to what Nigel said. You know, my understanding of the Robin Hood story is that the rich people who were being robbed from didn't get much choice about handing over that treasure. And this is a really important point. Number one, this is the internationally wealthy who would be paying nothing in terms of tax. They wouldn't even be in this country. They'd be contributing to Monaco, the UAE, or Singapore, or California, or Miami, or wherever it might be. So that's the first point. These are people voluntarily paying in. You know, some of the questions, you know, for example, are we worried about running out of wealthy people? Well, Monaco isn't, Dubai isn't, Saudi Arabia isn't, you know, San Francisco, Miami, New York are not. And by the way, we've gone from 140,000 non-doms in this country in 2008 to around half that number in 15 years. So that's, you know, 10,000 per year for 7 years at the high end of our estimates, just to get back to where we were in 2008, as obviously that global population of millionaires and billionaires grows all the time. And then going back to the reasonable question about pricing it at £250,000, if you're trying to price something like this, one has to remember this is a finite group of people at any given point, and they're not really substitutable, meaning that anyone who is in Dubai is not by definition here. Anyone who is in Monaco is not by definition here. And unlike Portugal, unlike Greece, unlike Italy, in the United Kingdom, they pay that £250,000 up front. So they are having to make that commitment of still a sizable amount of money. That is what will allow Nigel as Prime Minister to distribute that to those 2.5 million workers. So I think all of those points are really important. We think £250,000 is a great number, and we're extremely confident we'll have a lot of demand.
Rowena Mason, Guardian.
Hi there. There's a tax expert called Dan Nigel who thinks that
your policy, you're quite right.
He thinks that your policies will cost more than £30 billion.
He should be on the stage. He's so wrong about everything. He should be on the stage. How can it cost? Explain how it can cost.
I think one of the reasons he's saying is that people might not come here because Parliament can't bind its successors, and you couldn't guarantee to people that they would have this deal for, say, 10 years. So he's kind of questioning the attractiveness of it, and also highlighting that people who can't afford that £250,000 might be deterred from coming to the UK. And also questioning, you know, have you got an overall costing for the policy?
Oh dear, oh dear, oh dear. I'm not clever enough to answer any of that. That just sounds just completely off-the-wall nonsense. I'm really sorry, but I think what we've got here is a very attractive offer. People are fleeing this country in droves. Our economy's in trouble. There are fears of wealth taxes coming in. All the mood music is bad. It isn't just foreigners leaving Britain, by the way. We've got a brain drain of our own people going on, the biggest since 1978, where young, qualified people, entrepreneurial people are leaving our shores as well. This is about turning all of that around. And as for no Parliament can bind its successor, well, look, we can do a deal with somebody, and you're quite right. A future government could change that, but I would have thought they'd be rather unlikely to, unless they want to see the exodus beginning all over again. Freddie Hayward from the New Statesman.
Thank you, Nigel. I remember someone saying in 2016 that the Syrian civil war was pushing our immigration system to breaking point. A minute ago you said that there's no way in which we can tell where this is going to end up. You also said it can't be worse than the present. So those two things can't be true at the same time. My question is, do you worry that your loyalty and friendship with Donald Trump could distract you from some of the more pressing issues in this country?
What are you on about?
Well,
I believe that our foreign policy on Iran has been wrong.
Yeah.
We blindly followed Obama. So blindly following America can be a big mistake, and it was one we did make with that JCPOA deal. It was a terrible deal. We should never, ever have followed it. Look, I just want you to recognise, and I've made this point already, but I'll make it again because it is very, very important, that whether we like a particular American president or not, whether we support their current policies or not, and I disagreed strongly with Obama over that, But we do have to recognise that without America, we are defenceless. We cannot defend ourselves without a good relationship with America. So it is a vital relationship.
Yeah, so you are saying that part of your support for the mission is to do with this broader loyalty to America?
No. I don't want to see Israel obliterated from the face of the map with the death of millions of people. And frankly, I fear that's what Iran might do. That's the primary motive behind all of this. That's why America's got involved. And I do deeply fear Iran getting nuclear capability. Deeply fear. And I suggest we should all deeply fear it as well. Okay. Antonello from La Repubblica.
Hello, thank you, Mr. Farage. Still regarding Iran, the UK government is, of course, actively pursuing a diplomatic path alongside other European allies to avoid escalation and all-out war. Do you think it's worthwhile or useful to spend so much time engaging with the Europeans rather than aligning directly with Donald Trump on whatever he does? And secondly, if I may, do you believe that Vladimir Putin could or should play a diplomatic role between Iran and the West at this stage? Thank you.
Well, the Europeans can't decide what they want to do. And it's quite interesting, I thought, that, at the recent summit, they were all there, European Commission President, European Council President, but frankly, their role in the world is diminishing very, very rapidly indeed, is my feeling. And as for future diplomatic roles, I'm not going to comment on that. Just to say to La Repubblica that with this policy, we're taking you on. You've been nicking all our best people from Milano. We're going to get them back, all right? Do publish that, please. Liz Bates, Sky News.
Thanks. When I speak to people on low incomes, especially those who are inclined to vote reform, and there are quite a lot of them now, they never say they want a cash handout from the government. The opposite of that, and I'm sure you hear this, they want a system that is fair, where all the rules apply to everybody, where everybody pays in. And this sounds a little bit like a system where if you're a rich foreigner, you can opt out of paying some UK taxes just by virtue of being very rich. How are you going to convince your voters that that's fair?
We're asking rich foreigners to opt in.
Can I just finish the question? Some of them, I think, might say, if you don't want to pay all your taxes in the UK, then go to Monaco. We won't miss you.
They've gone, and they're going rapidly, don't you understand? This is about bringing them back. We're asking rich foreigners to opt in. We're asking rich foreigners to give us £250,000. We're asking rich foreigners to buy a big house and give us stamp duty. We're asking rich foreigners to pay income tax on their UK income once they've established their businesses here and pay an average of £120,000 a year income tax. We're asking rich foreigners to spend money in restaurants and give us VAT receipts. So no. As for the first part of the question, they have had their tax thresholds frozen. They have seen their energy bills going up. They have seen the cost of childcare, in many cases that's relevant, going up. And we want to help them in any way we can. And if they were to get a rebate or a working tax credit, or whichever way it came to them, do you know what? They'd be over the moon. Okay, the last question on my list, number 15, is Harry Horton from ITV.
Thank you very much, Nigel. On Iran, to be absolutely clear, do you want to see regime change in Iran? You say the Europeans don't have a role to play. Do you think that the UK has a role to play? Do you think Israel and the United States will listen to this UK government? And then just on this tax policy, one of the big challenges facing working people across the country, but especially in London, is the price of property. Do you think a big influx of millionaires to London would push up property prices even further?
It's a good point. The property question is a good point. We've seen falls in the property market of about 20%, maybe 25% in Westminster, in Kensington and Chelsea. It's tough to sell a house when everybody wants to sell a house. The question, Harry, has that had a big effect on more affordable pricing down towards the lower end of that relative property ladder? And the answer is no. Do you know why? Because the population's exploding. Because of immigration, the population's exploding, and there would be an argument that rich people leaving and property prices falling, if it fed right down, could be a benefit. And I've thought about that many, many times over the years. But when you have a net population rising by as much as it is, no. And it's interesting, I mean, even if the government were to build 1.5 million homes, which they won't, that of itself would not cope with the increase in population led by legal immigration into Britain over that period in time. So no, there is actually, I don't see any prospect of this filtering down to more affordable housing. But I agree with you, it is a massive, massive problem. Sorry, you asked something else as well, I forgot. Sorry. Well, I mean, the UK's role is, is the UK still an ally to Israel? I'm just not sure. We're sanctioning Israeli politicians, we're stopping the sales of arms. It's pretty clear that the Foreign Secretary has little or no time for Israel. So we're in a slightly strange position. I suspect going forward with Iran that we will probably be more of a spectator than anything else. Do I want to see Israel? Well, look, I find it difficult to believe that what comes after 40 years of brutality, public executions, and all of the things that happen there, I'd love to see it transform, relatively peacefully to something better. What will happen? I don't know. Regardless of that, I think the actions that have been taken by Israel and America over the course of the last week are the right ones, and we at Reform UK support that fully. Thank you, everybody. Thank you.